Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing? I hope that you are having a wonderful Wednesday, early morning Wednesday, grand rising, rich rising, wealth rising, right? Abundance rising, okay? Peace rising, right? All of these things we want to be thinking about. How do we want to set our intention for the day? I'm Coach Brandi here with Bit New Life. And today we are going to be talking about one of the dimensions of wellness that I think is, it's harder to control every aspect of this one because this one involves other people. But there's certain parts of it that we can control when it involves our immediate surroundings. And so today we're going to be talking about environmental wellness. Okay, so we've been going through Peggy Swarbrick's 8 Dimensions of Wellness assessment. And one of the things that we've been doing with that is keeping score on our, just how well we're doing in these different areas. So like we did physical wellness, we've done intellectual wellness, and today we're doing environmental wellness. So if you don't already have a pen and a paper or a pencil, go ahead and go and grab that. You might want to do that if you really want to take some notes, you want to participate fully in this assessment. But we're going to be going through this and then talking about some of those things in the assessment and what that may or may not mean. Okay, so in order to those of you who are truly going to do this assessment with me, the scoring system is from 0 to 2. 0 is going to mean that you very seldom do this. 2 is going to mean you very often do this. And 1 is going to be right in the middle. Sometimes you do it, sometimes you don't. All right. And so environmental wellness. Okay, let's talk about what that is, right? And so the definition that's in the workbook that we've been going off Peggy Swarbrick's workbook says environmental wellness involves being and feeling safe in safe and clean surroundings and being able to access clean air, food, and water. It includes both our microenvironment, which are the places where we live, work, learn, etc., and our macro environment, our communities, country, and whole planet. So our environmental wellness, like I said, there's certain things around it that we can have a little bit more control over, but there's a lot of elements in our environmental wellness that are beyond us, right? Or at least they're beyond our immediate change, but we can make small steps and improvements in order to change those things, right? The macro environment, we can change it on a micro level, right? Did you guys catch that? So we want to be thinking about that. Okay. Let's consider before we actually get into the assessment, what our strengths are in this environment, right? And I also like to take this and who are you around and where are you around them in, right? I remember I used to be in a lot of times working in these kind of like sketchy environments, right? When I was younger, weren't necessarily safe for me and just kind of being in a lot of environments because of my own past and history, right? My own journey, my own testimony, I found myself in these environments that weren't safe, where I didn't have food to eat, or where the environment around me was dirty, or, where my safety was compromised, right? All of these different situations when you've gone through hardship that makes it terribly, terribly, terribly difficult to control that environment. But what can you control within it? What can you do to increase your chances of wellness? And so what are your strengths in this area? Now, as I've gotten to be a little bit older, I do things to enhance my environment. So I'll do things like color choice, right? People talk about like what colors make you feel a certain way. I'll think about that. Art has a huge, huge impression on my environmental wellness and mood, just adding a little bit of color here. I take the essential oils and I put in the diffuser. I smell, for the aromatherapy. How does that make you feel? Does it make you feel zen to do that, right? What are you putting in your physical environment in order to make it feel safe? Right. And then there's also the actual safety aspect of it, right? Are you actually safe? Not just do you feel safe, but are you also actually safe, right? Okay, so let's talk about a couple of things really quickly. This is a good time for you to take out that pen and paper and let's get to it. Okay, so the first question is, I regularly clean my living and work environment. Now, this does not mean like, do I not always do my chores on time every single day? I know, I know. At least I personally struggle with doing chores all the time. I mean, I do them, but I hate doing laundry. It's not something that I want to be doing. So it's not like, do you do the laundry every day or anything like that? This is a deeper question about, do you clean it? Is it dirty? Is it bug infested? Are you taking, do you have rats in your immediate environment? It's your environment in a way where, you have fire hazards, right, around where you're not cleaning up your environment. And I know growing up, I grew up and I went to church growing up. And one of the things that you hear is, from your elders, cleanliness is next to godliness, right? And so that's one thing that we can actually take, from our elders, right? Is that you do want to clean, and then to put it to in a more in a more non religious sort of context, right? Your environment, your immediate environment is going to reflect your mental state, is going to reflect, how your inner workings are and your inner peace. So if you claim to be somebody who is living not outside of chaos, right? But then you go into your environment, whether or not it be your living situation or your work environment, and it's chaotic. Well, I think that's reflecting, or even your car, right? That's a reflection of something else going on, even if it's a little bit deeper, right? So it's something that I implore those of you who are in that situation to explore a little bit more, right? I remember I was talking with a real estate agent, and they were saying, if you ever want to see how your tenants are going to look, just take a walk to their car and look in the back seat and see how they keep their car. It doesn't have to be spick and span, but it does need to be safe, and it does need to be to more or less clean and tidy, right, to the degree of function, right? So definitely want to think, are you a 0, a 1, or a 2 in this particular question, right? Do you regularly clean your living and work environment? Not for show, not for anybody else, but just for you, right? I know that when things get a little busy, right, and there's just too much going on my end, that's really a lot of times when I personally end up neglecting some of these cleaning responsibilities that I have to my household, or to, even to my car, right? My workspace is pretty clean all the time because I just cannot work in in unclean environments. But definitely everything else kind of suffers from my chaos. Anytime, I'm telling you, no lie, anytime there's a whole bunch going on, it's like, what suffers? My ability to clean. Like, when do I have time to do that? And so in that way, it truly is a reflection of what's happening with you. All right, let's move on. The second question says, I make maximal use of natural light fresh air, and live plants, making maximal use of natural light, fresh air, and live plants. So last weekend, I actually hosted a hike in Massachusetts. Okay, so those of you who are from New England, I would love to be, hopefully would love to see you on a future hike. If you haven't already joined my Facebook group to get some more information on what things I'm doing, then you want to join that group. That group is the Fit New Lifers. Okay, group on Facebook. So just go ahead and search that group. It is a private group, but if you request and you say, hey, I saw you on YouTube, then I'll go ahead and I'll accept you into that group, and you'll be able to see kind of like where I'm holding events, wellness events, fitness events in and around the New England area, and also in New York. So that's where I do the majority of my events. But anyway, going back, join that group, a little plug for the group. But I took a group, two families, I took on a hike to Mount Tom, okay, in Holyoke, Massachusetts. And it was so nice to be able to see. The youngest was 4 years old who came, and the oldest among us was, my age. I'm not gonna, a girl doesn't give her age. Okay, but it was just such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. And I try to go out and hike and walk outside as much as possible. Week before that, I was on a beach run with my fiance, and we had a great, great time. So you just want to think, are you making use of that? When right now, we're sunrise sessions, and we know that it's, in a lot of places around the world right now, especially on this side of the hemisphere, it's dark outside. It's dark outside right now, but when the sun starts to go up, when it starts to rise, are you opening up those windows? Are you allowing for natural light? Getting the vitamin D. A lot of us are vitamin D deficient, right? And so we want to be able to get it from one of our vitamin D sources, and one of them is sunlight. So are we getting that? Are we making maximal use of that? Fresh, clean air. It's what we breathe, people. It's really, really important. We cannot neglect breathing in fresh, clean air. So what does that mean? You don't have to have enough money to get an air purifier in order to actually breathe in the air, right? This can be adapting some kind of a meditation practice in a clean environment, right? Going out to, I was talking about my beach run the weekend before last, it was actually going on that beach run. And then I just sat down and folded my legs, and breathed in that air and did a meditation, right? Focusing on my breathing, my breath work. So that also is another way that we can do it. I know that it's a new practice for some of us, but it's one way where we can literally take in our environment and have that make some kind of impression and change on our well-being. So are you a 0, a 1, or a 2 in this area? How often do you do this, right? How often do you just take some time to enjoy the environment, the clean air, the plants, the foliage, everything around you? Taking in that sunlight, right? Take an assessment. And if you live in an urban environment, sometimes it's gonna be a little bit harder to do, because you're like, well, everywhere that I go, there's pollution. There's cars everywhere. Makes it really hard to put some of these things into play. But find a space maybe in your house, right, that you can just kind of sanction off just for this. And even if it's inside, and you're breathing in the air, you're opening up the windows, right? It's not always going to be perfect, ideal situations, but you have to find within your own environment, how are you making use of your macro environment? All right, number 3, I discard garbage regularly clean spoiled foods out of the refrigerator, and stay on top of any pet odors, right? Now, why might this be coming up? Why might this be coming up as an environmental hazard if you don't do these things, right? Because there's waste products, there's bacteria that grows on top of those foods. There's bacteria and viruses and all sorts of little critters and pathogens that grow on that food, that grow on that pet litter, or anything else that might be decaying or rotting, right? There's all kind of gross little things that we can only see with a microscope, okay, that might be living all on that. And if we are not disposing of those things, we really are exposing ourselves to the possibility of sickness through pathogens, and we don't want that. So it's super important to discard your trash, your spoiled waste, your pet litter, and staying on top of those odors that we smell, right? Because there's many different ways that we can get some of these unwanted things into our bodies. So make sure that we stay on top of those. Are you currently doing that, right? Are you currently doing that? And then how would you score that for yourself? Take some time and think about that. Okay. Now I know a lot of this kind of seems like, okay, you're talking about cleaning, and this is not to, trigger any kind of, obsession with cleaning or anything like that. But it is just to say that we want to make sure that we're at our healthiest and to recognize that being on top of our environment is going to be a contributing factor to how healthy we are. Since the pandemic, starting at the end of 2019 and all the way up until today, I feel like on a global scale, we've been thinking about being a little bit more clean, using hand sanitizers, washing our hands for 20 to 30 seconds, and cleaning underneath the fingernails and making sure that we're wiping down countertops and all this stuff. These were routines and habits that we were not used to. They are reactionary habits that we've had to come into in order to reduce the likelihood that we will get sick or that we will get others sick. And so even outside of a pandemic, it's important to keep these sorts of new routines in play, right? Because they do wonders for your overall health and wellness. Okay, so we want to know next, do we tidy the home and workspaces in order to prevent clutter and stay organized? We talked a little bit about this when we were discussing the strengths, right? What are your strengths? And so staying on top of our organization, like I was saying before, our mental state is going to be reflected through our immediate physical surroundings and environmental surroundings. So what does that look like? Right? Is it looking chaotic? Are there papers everywhere? Are there clothes everywhere? Are the countertops a mess? If you're at work, are there documents just here, there, and everywhere? Can you barely see your desk space? Right? What does that look like? Are you able to get anything done? Are you able to think in this space? And if you find that you're not, it might be time to do some stuff. Okay. So we want to think, how are we doing in that area, right? I shared with you that, I'm really good at keeping my workspace tidy. And I'm decently good at keeping my home tidy, right? But when things for me are kind of out of whack, you can tell the difference. And it's never quite messy, but it's just not the same. And you can see that it's a reflection of the physical world, in our physical environment, what's going on with us internally. So keep that in mind, and make sure that you're reflecting the right message, right? You're reflecting the right story about how you're doing. It's that serious. Okay. All right. The next one we're looking at is I conserve my energy. I like this one. So I conserve my energy. This is fuel, electricity, water, etc. in my home, my car, and elsewhere. Now, this is important on a macro level, right? So a lot of folks who are environmentalists, right, are going to be like cheering this particular statement, right? So this is like we were saying before, we have our micro environments, which is, the smaller environments that are around us that we have a little bit more control over. And we also have our macro environments, those bigger environments, the world, for instance, right? The country, for instance, that we can impact on a smaller scale, but it makes a bigger footprint, right? So what are you doing? Are you doing your part? Really is what this is asking. Are you doing your part in that macro environment, in that global environment, right? In order to make healthier, long-lasting changes for us and also for future generations. Are we doing that? Are we conserving the energy? Or are we just, I don't know, doing activities that require a lot of energy, right? So for example, mining Bitcoin, might be something that takes a whole lot of energy. But it might be important for your financial wellness. So it gets complicated, right? What are we doing? And does it have purpose, right? But so on the one hand, that may be something we say, okay, well, and I'm not giving my opinion on this, but it might be something that someone might say, okay, yeah, it takes a lot of energy, but it's worth it, right? It's energy well spent, right? As opposed to, are we, let's say, using up a whole bunch of fuel, burning up our trash and burning us, things that we thought was going to be, that was good back in the day, but we know is not the best use for fuel and energy. Are we doing that, right? So that's going to impact us on an environmental scale. So those are questions we want to be asking ourselves. What are we doing to conserve energy? Now, this is an area that I'll admit I would like to get better in. I do a lot of driving for work, right? I'm in a lot of different states. On any given day, I'm in at least 2 or 3 different states. And so, that has a lot to do with the kind of work that I engage in and the kind of impact that I have and just where my job spaces are located. And so, I might be putting a little bit more exhaust into the environment. And is there something that I can do to reduce that? If I take the train in, maybe that reduces that footprint a little bit, but it also puts a strain on my financial wellness. And so, none of these things are just kind of cut and dry, right? There's always different sides to it. And so that's why mastering these 8 dimensions of wellness is really a practice, right? You don't have to be perfect in it, but you just have to be better than you were the day before, right? And then small incremental steps will get us to a place where we are actualizing a life of mastery. And that's what it's all about. So we don't have to be perfect here. So if you're scoring a 0 on this one, I very seldom conserve energy. It's okay. It's all right. We just know, like, okay, this is a starting point for us. So we want to get better in this, and we want to be cognizant of what we can do to do our part. Okay. So moving on, we've got 4 more questions. Kind of related to that is, do you recycle, right? Do you recycle? Do you know how to recycle? That's a huge question too, right? What are you doing for that? Another macro goal, right, with recycling, but it's something that you can actually do from your very own home or from your workspace, is just making sure that you know how to recycle and that you're doing that, because it may not bother you specifically, but like I said, it means a lot for our environment. It means a lot for not just animals, right? We talk about like animals being impacted, really being impacted negatively and sometimes fatally by some of our choices as human beings on this planet. And all of the trash that ends up in these landfills, and how it just piles and piles up. And we hear rumors of dump sites that have islands of trash, right? Islands of trash, sometimes the size of small countries. And just what does that do to our planetary environment? We got to get on top of it. We got to do our part. We got to do our part, right? Get outside of the individual egocentric, how does this impact me? And think a little bit more outwardly. How do my decisions right now impact those around me, right? Because we're all connected in that way. All right. Similar to that is I do not litter. You want to make sure that for each of these you're putting, do you litter often? Do you seldom litter? Do you litter sometimes? Right? It's related to, that macro environment impact that we can have by making these decisions, these everyday decisions. If there's a trash can, put it in the trash. If there's a recycling bin, make the decision to put your plastics into the recycling bin, right? Point blank, period. All right. I purchase recycled items when possible. Rate yourself here. Do you purchase recycled items when possible? And if you don't know the answer to this, a lot of times it'll be written on the label, or you can, ask the manufacturer, go online, research it, see, is this a recycled product that I'm using? Which I think it's really interesting how they now there's a technology to make all of these amazing furnitures out of not just furnitures, but items and furnitures out of these recycled products, right? And sometimes you'll see like handbags made out of recycled products, earrings, right? Clothing made out of recycled materials. There's so many different use cases. And so we want to think about that. Are you purchasing those as often as you can? Are you aware of it? Are you asking the right questions, right? Again, are we doing our part? All right. We're going to take a little bit of a detour from our macro environment, and now we're going to go super, super, super internal. And let's talk about, do you set aside time to enjoy nature? Do you set aside time to enjoy nature? Is there an opportunity for you to enjoy nature? Do you know where around you in your environment you could access a natural environment? And if you do not know, then I'm going to encourage you to find where it is in your immediate environment that you can go and retreat to a natural environment from time to time. There are two worlds here on Earth. There's the natural Earth, and there's the world that we have designed and developed here on Earth, right? So we maneuver day to day through, these buildings and this concrete jungle, so to speak, right? Believing that this is our world. It is the world that we have created as human beings, using the technologies that we've created, and maneuvering through this day to day as if it were our natural environment, but it's not. Let's get familiar with our natural environment, the natural world, and see what that connection does for you. I know for me, once I was able to discover it, it has changed a lot of how I operate. It's changed a lot of how I view things. Once I was able to go backpacking or camping or hiking, and was just able to engage in the natural splendor of the world, able to travel a little bit more and see more of these natural environments, the more that I realize that there's a bigger environment outside of my normal day-to-day And I think it's important for us to connect with that. And so that consideration makes this list um, of assessment statements, right? I set aside time to enjoy nature. Do you seldom do that? Do you do that sometimes? Do you do that often? Write that down for yourself. And then finally, question number 10 or statement number 10 is, I set aside time to reflect and or practice mindfulness. Now, I tend to think of mindfulness as part environmental, part spiritual. But we want to make sure that we are taking time, setting aside time for a mindfulness practice, but we also want to make sure that we're setting aside space for a mindfulness practice. Okay, this is, what is your internal environment like? Okay, are we able to meditate? Meditate is a huge one when it comes to mindfulness, right? Are we able to meditate? Are we able to connect to our immediate world? Are we able to connect to our immediate time, right? What are we doing in order to ground ourselves in our environments? What are we doing to ground ourselves in our minds and in our spirits? And are you setting aside time and space for that to happen? What does that space look like, right? Is it congruent and in harmony with how you want to feel inside? See how all of these things start to interconnect, how they all communicate and they're all interlaced one within the other. We want to make sure that we are always, always, always thinking about the internal and the external as reflections of one another. And that's really what this environmental wellness is all about. So in terms of scoring, all right, you're going to go ahead and score all of those 10 points. The most points that you can get is 20. And so you want to see where you are on that scale for environmental wellness, and are there opportunities for you to improve in this particular dimension of wellness? If there are, start to identify in what ways you could improve. Is it on some of the more macro environmental considerations? Is it on the recycling? Is it on littering, right? Or is it more of the micro environmental considerations? Are you tidying up and cleaning up your spaces? Are you allowing for clutter to take over your environment? So, is it dirty? Do you need to clean more? Or is it in the more mindfulness area of internal environments and having an external environmental space that allows for that change work or for that wellness work to happen, that practice of mindfulness? Well, family, I'm going to leave you with that today. I absolutely appreciate you taking the time to watch either live or later on the replay. All right, please make sure that you click the like button. Really would appreciate that, just to kind of know that folks are out here getting value from our discussions, our sunrise session discussions. Thank you so much for being with me. And I wish everybody a great, grand, blessed Wednesday. This has been Coach Brandi Nick with Fit New Life, and I will see you